Welcome to the show, everybody. Super excited to have with us today Jamie Skella. He is one of the co-founders of Horizon State, a super exciting project. Jamie, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Can you just tell anyone who hasn't heard about Horizon State yet, the quick elevator pitch, what's it all about?
Yeah. Look, in a nutshell, I think the most succinct way to explain what we're doing is the building of an unhackable ballot box. Now, this normally has immediate connotations in respect to electoral processes, but this sort of technology can be applied to any democratic process. So it can be an institution, large or small, a government, of course, at varying levels. So whether it's councils engaging, their residents, or an electoral process for the election of a representative, or a business utilising it for AGMs or even shareholder votes. Anywhere that the result should be accountable and transparent and have all those characteristics that sort of deliver confidence and trust to the people involved in the decision-making process, it's a good fit.
Fantastic. I like it. It's a great idea. Now, why is blockchain a good fit for voting?
Well, when we think about the properties of a sort of a Bitcoin transaction or a cryptocurrency transaction, and you think about how it's possible in respect to the decentralized and distributed nature of the network, the nodes that verify transactions, and the fact that it is immutable and irreversible, and that it is sort of recorded in perpetuity for potential recount in respect to voting, but of course perpetuity for other reasons in respect to typical ledger use cases such as financial transactions, then all of those properties just so happen to make really good properties for a voting system and a ballot box as well, as I'm sure you can agree. And so that's sort of where the idea started a couple of years ago. I was working with a not-for-profit democratic movement out of Melbourne here in Australia, and we wanted to be able to engage the constituency with frequency and regularity and immediacy. And what this meant was that we had to try and solve this internet voting thing because, traditionally, inherently, internet voting is insecure because you are casting votes to a centralized server. And so, it makes it relatively easy for people to potentially, mess with the result. It opens the door for bad actors. But also in comparison to paper ballot boxes and postal votes and traditional processes, even electronic voting machines as they exist right now, it's still a significant step up over that again, where we're in a position now to reduce costs further, improve efficiencies, and those are sort of 10x increases across the board. But then we have this sort of infinite improvement in regards to the security of the vote, making sure that people can't tamper with the outcome. And thus play an important role in moving towards a future where we're able to try and eradicate corruption in our sort of democratic processes.
That's awesome. It's mind-blowing for me. Here we are, 2017. It's almost 2018. We're still doing postal voting. I don't use the post office for almost anything, to send a Christmas card to my grandma, but to vote, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy that this is still how the system is operating. I know recently there was a referendum. Was it the marriage equality referendum in Australia? And that was a postal vote?
Yeah, that's right. Yep. So, I mean, crazy in terms of the time it took, the cost to the taxpayers. 2.5 months and about 120 million Australian dollars. I think that's probably around 100 or 90 US. I imagine I'd have to do a conversion, but it's a significant amount of money. Takes a lot of time, and the security of that vote particularly poor. I mean, we saw postal votes left out in the rain, postal votes being sent to the wrong people, and then being filled in by wrong people to score extra votes. So, despite the fact that it's what we're used to, it's certainly not the best way to keep doing these sorts of things.
No, that's it. This is we have to develop, and that's the amazing thing about Horizon State is that this is the solution. This is how I've always when I first found out about blockchain, one of the first things I said, this is going to be great for voting someday. This is how it's going to have to happen in the future, because I've always thought voting has to happen across the internet, computers. This is how it's got to happen. But for all the problems you just mentioned, it's been difficult until now. Now we have the tools.
That's right.
We just have to get people to use them. So we're going to bring down... Go ahead.
There's a lot of other positive sort of byproducts of conducting our democratic processes in this way as well. Now, for example, in countries where voting is non-compulsory, such as the United States, then we know that the further somebody is away from their local polling station, if they are the personality that doesn't believe their vote counts, then they're less likely to make that effort to go and vote at all. But when we introduce the opportunity to digest high-level pieces of critical information and vote from the convenience of your pocket, then we're able to also encourage participation and hopefully create more democratic democracies as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for people who don't know, in the United States, for example, they, on election day, they send the political parties organize buses to go out into the suburbs and out into the small places and pick people up and take them in to vote. That's a crazy situation, and while we may never get the grandmas using Horizon State, certainly the next generation will definitely be on board with this. Now, the one thing that really speaks to me, and I think speaks to anyone with a sense for finance, is the amazing cost savings of Horizon State. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at, for example, the postal vote, the same-sex marriage plebiscite here in Australia, it works out to be around $7 per Australian active voter, and in fact, I think it worked out to be more expensive than that in the end, based on the number of votes received, because it was a non-binding vote. It wasn't compulsory, and you didn't get fined if you didn't participate, which is typically the case with voting in this country. And so, if you're talking about a cost per vote of $10, that unto itself sounds a little bit mad. But then when you think about the fact that it's you and I that are footing the bill for these kinds of processes, where it's our tax dollars that are paying for the orchestration of these processes, then it's even a little bit more sort of upsetting and sort of confusing as to why this is still happening this way. Now, utilizing blockchain technology and the platform that Horizon State has developed, that cost would be, significantly cheaper. It's blindingly better. It would be in the vicinity of sort of $2 million instead of $122 million. So it's just a staggering difference. And again, it would be more efficient, and unlike the current process, is perfectly secure. So it's a big deal.
Wow. That kind of cost savings is, it's amazing. It's amazing. It just goes to show what new technology is going to do to revolutionize these old systems. Amazing. Now, look, democracy overall, I suppose, has had some problems. I mean, we've got voter fraud to an extent in certain countries. I mean, it's obviously the problem's worse in some countries than others. Lack of incentive, all these things. And corruption is massive. Now, Australia, New Zealand, we're lucky. We really are. We live in, these responsive democracies where we can actually feel like our vote counts. The sense of apathy is much less here compared to, in other countries. And we can say the United States is a prime example. How do you get political parties who have everything to lose and very little to gain to hop on board with Horizon State in countries like the United States?
Yeah, it really boils down to the good actors wanting to make more time for better governance. If you think about what's been going on over in the US for the sort of past 12 months, especially more recently than that, there's been a lot of wasted energy talking about potential interference. Now, obviously, that is not okay, but the bottom line is if we're able to mitigate these potential vectors for interference or otherwise vote tampering or malicious activity within these democratic and electoral processes, then we're able to put that time aside that we would otherwise spend talking about them and just get on with the actual job. So I think this is a big deal for the good actors. And look, it varies in place to place because obviously there are some bad actors as well, and they will be the sorts of people that might be resisting this kind of technology. And I think it's probably a pretty good gauge to figure out which individuals or which organizations or which countries are more corrupt than others based on their resistance to the adoption of this kind of technology. When I was over in South Korea recently speaking at an international mayors forum, there was hundreds of mayors from all around the world, and one of the most engaging conversations I had after my panel session was with a mayor of Afghanistan. And to him, being a good guy, so it seems, was just blown away by the fact that we will be able to leverage this technology to help eradicate corruption in the democratic processes. But, it was said in not so many words that this is a technology that we'll have to take straight to the president for consideration because some of the other mayors might not like it.
Well, that's it. There will always be resistance, basically from the dishonest actors who are worried about losing power. But that's why it's so important. Again, this technology is so exciting. Now, I want to talk real quick about the token. Now, what exactly does the Horizon, what's you guys, it's not called the Horizon State token. It's what's the name
Well,
for it?
we called it the decision token, and the
Decision
reason
token, yes.
the symbol was originally going to be DCT, but someone snuck in there and grabbed it while we were doing our ICO planning process by the looks of it. So we switched the token symbol back out to HST, which obviously everybody identifies as Horizon State token, but we maintain the name of decision token. So it can be a little bit confusing, but yes, that's what it's called.
Very cool. Now, what is the actual functionality of that token? How, I'm a voter. How am I going to use that token?
So ultimately, the token represents access rights to our platform. So as somebody who has participated in the ICO or is now going to buy these tokens on an exchange, you're in effect signaling that you intend to do one of two things. One is wait for potential appreciation based on the demand that our platform will increasingly have with global NGOs, multinational enterprises, governments, who will need to utilize HST and our ecosystem. And so if they want to cast votes or incentivize constituents or run campaign fundraising within the platform, then HST is effectively the currency, the intra-ecosystem currency to pay for that activity. So as an end user, if you don't intend to be leveraging our APIs and SDKs into the future to build some of your own ideas surrounding voting mechanisms and platforms, then there's no real current use for the end user except for those two purposes. So it's about really being a developer and needing to utilize HST to support your local community or whatever other audience or constituency will be utilizing the cool stuff that you develop. Or it will be somebody who believes in what we're doing, can see this being very successful and is anticipating the appreciation of the token based on customer demand from us.
Yeah, and I definitely think there's going to be a lot of customer demand. You look at the scale of what this can do. City governments, corporations, I don't know, church groups, whatever. Anyone can do it. Anytime you've got a vote that you're worried about, potential funny business, this has the use case for it.
That's right. Yeah.
I saw that you were planning on an 8% burn rate. Is that still in the plans? And if so, can you expand on that a bit?
We have posted a token economics, a token mechanics blog on our Medium page. That was drafted up by Nemo Namani, our CTO. And to be honest, I don't recall right now off the top of my head the exact figures, but if anybody wants to check it out and see the full breakdown in respect to what that burn rate looks like and which percentage goes to charities and this sort of thing, head along to our Medium and have a read there. It's all pretty detailed. And if you've got any questions, make sure you jump into our Telegram. Nemo's in there very frequently. So is Dan Crane and Jason and myself from time to time as well. So we'll be there in case anything's unclear. But it was really well received. We were really pleased with the community's response to that sort of mechanics definition.
Fantastic. Very cool. And that you did mention very briefly, but I wanted to maybe get you to expand on that a little bit. If I remember correctly, and again, everyone go check the Medium article, I think it was 5% will go, so this is the fees that are being paid out, but 5% will go to charity. So what inspired you to actually build that into as part of your mechanism? Well,
we felt it was quite aligned with our product and our vision and the sorts of things we were trying to achieve in regards to the impact we were trying to have for the world. And, this is effectively a for-good project more than anything else. It just so happens that there's a very strong commercial angle here. But sometimes, commercial business is the best way to get real meaningful stuff done. But we wanted to make sure that we're able to give back to causes along the way as well. And so over time, what we'll be doing is asking the community through a kind of DAO is getting people involved in the decision-making process about which charities are selected and how much goes where and when and why. So we really look forward to engaging with the community, the Horizon State community into the future about what that looks like. We're pretty excited.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, there is a UN partnership. What are the details behind your partnership with the UN?
So we've got a couple of partnerships. One of them was made back in August, September, which was with SAP. We were in really close talks with a division of SAP called NextGen, which works within the Leonardo offices in New York City. And through that SAP partnership, we're going to be looking at opportunities to work with their smart cities team and their public services team, which is going to create a lot of opportunity for us in regards to how far and wide we can cast this net in a very short amount of time. But the most recent announcement is indeed the United Nations IGO, and that IGO specifically is the Earth Foundation as well as Future of Humanity, and we're working with the United Nations in respect to their Sustainable Development Goals, otherwise referred to as the SDGs, and these are 17 really big goals. I mean, these take global coordination and a lot of time, but they're about really big ideas and really important things that we sort of need to solve as a global collective quite soon, because otherwise some of these things might turn out to be existential threats, which is no fun for anybody. And so SDG 16 is the one that relates most closely to us, which is about the cultivation of strong institutions, keeping them accountable and transparent, and ultimately working towards harmonious and peaceful societies by sort of, creating some equality between institution and citizens. So we've got more news on this very soon. Early next year, we've got some more to talk about in regards to this specific United Nations deal, but as well as some other conversations we're having with the UN. Nemo Namani, our CTO, was recently in Singapore speaking at a United Nations Development Program event as well. So there's lots of current streams sort of currently underway.
Wow, I mean, that in of itself is just, even if you only did that, great.
Yeah.
That's just the first step,
It's funny though, everybody is sort of hanging out, as are we in a lot of ways, for these big, seemingly profound matters of cooperation to start happening, whether that's national governments or indeed the United Nations. This excites people. But from a token holder perspective and a commercial viability perspective, we actually have much stronger opportunities for benefit of both of those parties through stuff that isn't quite so meaningful, I guess you'd say. I mean, we're working with some big NGOs, global in nature, as well as some enterprises, both national and international in nature. And when these guys start to switch on with our tech, it's going to mean much bigger things for our token economics and for commercial success, for business success, than potentially some of those other deals. And the quick analogy that I usually give people is that in Australia, if we were to convince the federal government to utilise our tech for national elections every few years, then that would be sort of 15 million votes every few years. That's the sort of eligible voter population of the country. Whereas with this global NGO that we're talking with about engaging their membership of almost 10 million members regularly, then we could be doing tens of millions of votes per year or other processes within our platform just for that one customer.
Wow. Very, very interesting. What would you say are the strengths and weaknesses of your team?
Look, obviously, any opinion I have on this is going to be not so objective and look relatively biased. But I think, look, the team's fantastic. We've spent a lot of time thinking about who should be involved, and now we are expanding with some really hotshot developers out of New Zealand. Funnily enough, our CTO is based in Wellington. Yeah. I think right now our weakness is that we have too many opportunities and not enough product ready. So we've got this core product that's been up and running since February for my vote. It's a pretty high quality MVP, but we still consider it an MVP. So there's lots we want to do to improve it. There's lots we want to do to extend it. And because it's been up and running for so long, we've had just a constant stream of inquiries and leads in regards to potential customers. And we're really having to sprint to try and keep up with that opportunity. But we'll get there. With the new people we're bringing on from Wellington in respect to our development capability and the rest of the roadmap in regards to staffing, we're looking forward to 2018. It's gonna be a big year for us.
Cool, very cool. And what about your marketing plans? And maybe this is, I guess, when I think about team weaknesses, by the way, I think, maybe, who do you need to hire still? What positions are you looking to fill? And, maybe our marketers, some of those, and if not, what is kind of the marketing plan going forward?
Sure. Well, our marketing plan really is business development, right? Because we aren't a traditional blockchain startup, and we aren't a traditional player in this space who's gone off to run a token sale. In that, while yes, there will be developers who can utilize our APIs and SDKs, and thus they will be token holders who literally use our platform. Most people won't, because we're effectively selling our technology into businesses and to governments and other institutions. And so The token itself and the way we need to market our product is in fact to those businesses. So the best possible marketing for us is making sure that we have the appropriate sales and business development capability in key markets that we want to attack, and make sure that we get as many customers on board as quickly as possible, because that's what's going to drive token economics as well as business success. But yes, we will be bringing on some dedicated marketing personnel early next year. But right now, it hasn't been such a huge priority for us, primarily because the customer pipeline is already so large. And the highest priority for us right now is just getting more developed.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess if you have people knocking at your door, you need, you don't need to get someone out in the street to find more people to knock at the door. That's kind of the other way around. So that's great. It's great to see that, people are responding to this, that, you've got a lot of different companies and nonprofits that are really interested in using this technology. I think it just speaks volumes to not only the idea, but, to your team. So that's really cool. Now, one thing I wanted to ask is the ICO came in quite under what you'd hoped to raise. What happened?
Well, it's funny you mention that, because I think marketing ultimately had a lot to do with it. We were one of the ICOs that really didn't spend any money on marketing at all. And you compare that to sort of your Power Ledgers of the world, who went off and spent millions of dollars on marketing to raise their 30-odd mil, and we didn't. So, we attribute part of the reality of our raise to that lack of marketing through the token sale period. Mm-hmm. But in respect to money that we were looking to raise versus what we did raise, and we had an absolute sort of bottom end of around 500,000 Australian. That would have given us commercial viability, given the reality that we do have so many customers knocking at the door, and revenue will begin very shortly with these, which will obviously bring money through. Mm-hmm. And I think if we were to talk about some of the financial planning that we did, while we had a very high cap, which was only intended to be a cap, we had really, really detailed information surrounding what the picture looked like for us at different breakpoints. In relation to the money raised, so far as what we could have versus what we did, we had some pretty significant and important breakpoints, 500 versus 1.5 mil versus 5 mil versus 15 mil and 30. And really, what these financial models laid out was the opportunity ahead for us, primarily in regards to business development and sales, and how quickly we could accelerate that pipeline. And so I think once we'd raised sort of towards the 3 and 4 million Australian mark, then really less begun to be spent on things like development, and more increasingly so as that potential raise got higher, we would have spent making sure that we mobilized teams in, for example, Japan and or Singapore, the United States, in London, maybe in Switzerland, to ensure that we can foster relationships and stay engaged on a full-time basis. Now, look, that hasn't happened. But in terms of the money we did raise, it was about 1.4 million Australian, which based on the current Ethereum appreciation is now more like 2.4 million, and that's after covering a whole bunch of expenses. And so things are looking really good for us so far as capital available, and with revenue about to begin for a range of customers. It means that we still have the opportunity to set up those business development resources in a short amount of time as well.
Fantastic. I want to talk about the roadmap now. Moving forward, I see if you've got some things about crowdfunding potentially on there, the potential to be leveraging AI as well. Can you describe a little bit about what you see moving forward with the roadmap?
So the roadmap, positioned as it was in the white paper on our website, is likely to probably change a lot over the next year or two, primarily because we are a startup that is customer driven. This isn't about creating what we consider our perfect vision and hoping that applies perfectly to our customer opportunities. This is going to be about working with them and making sure that we cater for the unique needs and requirements, which is going to be pretty common practice considering the sorts of customers that we are going to be dealing with. When you think about what the sales process might look like with a government, our speed to market with them is always going to be higher if we're going to be able to be accommodating of certain restrictions or features that they might want. And a good example of this is identity. So rather than trying to create some sort of blanket identity solution, we'll be looking to work very closely with all these partners and customers to appropriately cater for their specific needs. How the Queensland state government might want people identified will be very different to, for example, an ASX 100 business here in Australia, which will be very different to potentially Afghanistan. And so trying to apply one thing to all of them doesn't make a lot of commercial sense. It slows things down for us. But look, on the roadmap as it exists right now, and most of these things will be developed. It just depends in what order, really, and what else sort of might get slotted in. Maybe something will get taken out. But first off the rank is really our SDKs and our APIs. This not only powers the opportunity for us to move faster in terms of product development, but also gives us the opportunity to give some power to our customers and indeed to the community to start utilizing the core of our tech in their own interfaces, which takes some load off of us and again starts to accelerate things. And that really sort of rounds out the core offering in terms of this blockchain-based voting system. But of course, we're not just developing a blockchain-based voting system. This is about an entire decision-making platform. And so yes, there is campaign fundraising, there is, in respect to AI, there's information, collation, analysis, distribution. All these sorts of things are going to come into play in regards to not only making sure the vote is secure, but looking at ways that we can improve our democratic processes and improve the quality of the decisions that we make and the related outcomes, which I think is a really, really big deal. When you think about the fact that technology is on an exponential curve in terms of how rapidly things are changing and generally for the better, but what that means for individual empowerment to do potentially bad things or make bad decisions and thus have that immense new technological power cause harm instead of benefit. We need to find a way to also accelerate our capability to make good decisions. We need our decision-making power to also be exponential, aligned with this technological power increase. So, it's a big deal. I think one of the features that has been talked about most positively is in fact utilizing our ecosystem and HST to incentivize constituents to actually make better decisions. For example, My Vote puts together these really great information packs, which are collaborated on by people from the left of politics and people from the right, people from all around the world, citizens of the US and New Zealand and Australia. And because of that collaboration, the information packs are really good. They're quite objective. They're quite unbiased. It's high quality information, certainly far, far better than what you get on your TV news. But the question has always been, how do you get people to actually read the info and make better decisions, which means better outcomes for the entire community and society? And so utilizing our tech to be able to do things like that is really sort of what excites me most about the future for it.
Very, very interesting. Now, currently you're not listed on very many exchanges, and I know you can't give any, details, there's NDAs and all that stuff, but is that something you're currently pursuing, trying to get on some bigger exchanges?
Yep, absolutely. So there's 2 more exchange opportunities in the pipeline. I won't confirm which they are yet, but what I will talk about is a competition that Binance is running, which some people may know about, which is their sort of token listing competitions, and we'll be participating in that for next month, which starts relatively soon. And so not only will we be asking our community to obviously vote and or retweet, whatever the mechanism is to make sure that we can have a good crack at this, but we'll be incentivizing the broader community to try and make that happen. And so obviously it's a no-brainer for anybody who holds HST. They'd want to sort of vote for us to be listed on Binance. But for people that don't currently hold HST, that mightn't be the case. And so randomly selected, 10 of the people that vote for us will be given 1,000 HST, irrespective of whether we actually win or not. And if we happen to get listed, then that'll be bumped up to 2,000 HST for every single one of those people as well.
Wow, that is a great incentive on your end to make sure that people are getting out there and voting. It's there you go, surprise. The voting guys know how to get people to vote. I love it. That's really cool. Now, I saw a picture of you with, I think, with Jason Lee from NEM a few weeks ago or something like that. Look, CryptoKitties has crippled Ethereum. Do you worry about the scalability of Ethereum? Now, if we're going to have Australia voting, that's going to be 15 million transactions going through on one day. Currently, Ethereum probably can't handle that. Have you looked into other blockchains, or are you just kind of waiting on, hoping that, the ride-in network will come in and that we will see that scalability brought in by the time that you need it?
So the big benefit for us right now in respect to utilizing the Ethereum network and platform is twofold. One, it's the size of the network. They've got the largest number of full nodes on the planet compared to any other blockchain, and that includes Bitcoin, which is a big deal so far as network security. And when you're talking about the security of votes, even electoral votes and national votes, then that's a really, really important factor for us to consider. So Ethereum certainly has the lead in that regard. And in terms of the ability to spin up a token and run the token sale process, and the benefits that the ERC-20 standard has for us as developers was also a really big win. Ethereum has one of the largest development communities with some of the best documentation and best discussion. So these are all good things from a business confidence perspective as well. Now, yes, there are scaling issues with Ethereum. And anybody in this space, especially if you're developing this space, is acutely aware of the problems that currently exist. But there are lots of really, really smart people working on solving these problems. And so towards the end of 2018, we hope to see at least one of 3 scaling solutions or technology upgrades which improve scaling come into play. So sharding and/or RAID and/or Plasma. And if not towards the back end of 2018, certainly 2019. Now, for us, this isn't so much of a concern right now because most of our opportunities and most of the high volume opportunities are in fact enterprise in nature or an NGO in nature. And so they don't have the constraint of needing to run a tremendous amount of votes over a single day, as an example. So it's no sweat for us at the moment. But look, we'll play it by ear and see how things go throughout 2018 and 19 as well.
Very, very interesting. Great. Now, final perhaps thought for you. I know you've probably covered a little bit of this, but moving forward, what are the biggest challenges for you in actually making all this succeed?
Right now, I think sort of, following back to one of our earlier points of conversation, the biggest challenge is in fact developing fast enough. We have a tremendous amount of opportunity, but there isn't necessarily a lot of expertise in this space. Thankfully, most of our platform is in fact not blockchain, right? We have some very specific functions which actually they transact to the blockchain. But we have a content management system, and there is a campaign management system, and there is administration panels and user databases, and all these sorts of things won't necessarily be on the blockchain itself because it doesn't necessarily make sense to. But with the breadth of features that we're looking to develop for our lineup of customers, then for us it's really just figuring out how quickly can we turn on all these revenue streams? How quickly can we start signing these customers off and having them in real-world production versions of our system? Nemo is a bit of a genius. He's got it licked. But I think if anything, that would be our biggest challenge. Although it's not an insurmountable one. It's one that we're very comfortable with. It's just the only thing right now that everybody's like, wow, it's a weird but awesome position to be in. And that normally you build a startup and you sort of test market fit and market appetite, and then you go off trying to sell that tech into companies. And for us, it's really been the other way around. We've had customers knocking at the door, and now we need to continue to sort of extend that tech rapidly.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Well, excellent. Jamie, this has been a very interesting chat. I think a lot of people, have really gained a lot of information about Horizon State, and I know we're all going to be watching with, excitement as the project moves forward, as we, see partnerships get signed. And again, guys, watch out for this Binance vote to be coming up. Get involved. It's an amazing opportunity to score some HST tokens, but of course also to support an amazing project. Getting listed will just increase the knowledge of this project massively. So Jamie, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show with us.
Pleasure. Really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.